So I want you to get out the page that I had you finish up today on the values that you put in order. I do.
You're so cute.
That doesn't make a whole lot of sense here. So, we went through the first steps of this, which is to give yourself a pretty good idea, or to write down what things you value most, what are your kind of things most important to you stuff, and then we had you put them in a particular order as far as their importance to you. And we kind of discussed why that was such an important thing to do. The third step of this, the final part of this activity, which really brings this to life in incredibly powerful ways, is you're going to create a clarifying statement, a clarifying paragraph, or a clarifying statement that tells what it would be like if you were living that value perfectly. You may not be living it at all right now, and that doesn't matter. But if you were doing this, if that was a part of you, in other words, if you had actualized that value, what would that look like? And you're going to describe it. Now, there's three things that you want to keep in mind as you do this, and you're actually going to go through this process on your own. But we're going to practice with your first one here. And so the way this looks is, so let's say that for fun that my the value I'm going to put up here is let's say health. That's one of my values, to have optimum health. So the question is, so that's something that I've determined is something very important to me. I don't care if it's important to anybody else, but it's important to me. So the question is, how would that look? Or what would I be doing so that I'm actualizing that particular value? And the way we do this is we keep in mind three things when we write this. So we write these in terms of, so I want you to get this in your head, how you're going to make these clarifying statements or these clarifying paragraphs about your values. Is we do these first in terms of I statements. Okay, we do these as I statements. Now, what I mean by that is when we write these out, we say things like, if I were writing it out, I would say things like, I enjoy incredible, I'm just making this up, levels of energy. All day long. Okay, I feel strong, confident, whatever. Okay, we write. This is how I want it to look. We may even include things that I do. So, for example, I might say, I eat well, exercise regularly, and manage my stress, so on. Okay, so these are the things I would be doing. This is how I would like it to look. Now, The reason why we use I statements, what do you think, what is the psychology behind that? Why would I not say, people who are healthy, do those things? Why would I say I instead of people who? Corey?
It's a positive affirmation.
Meaning what?
Yourself. You're actually telling yourself this. It's your words you're speaking, and what you're hearing is actually programming you.
Right. So if we go back to our discussion on the subconscious mind, remember that? We talked about the hypnotist. We talked about why guided imagery works. Well, what is it about when you said programming? What are we programming? The subconscious mind. Yeah, we're driving that down into the subconscious mind, and it, not knowing any differently, will go, oh, okay. And it will start to create the behaviors that will lead to this outcome. Do you get that? If we say people who are healthy, eat well, you say that to your subconscious mind, what it's hearing really is, well, that's other people, but that ain't us. So good luck with that. But if we say, I enjoy incredible levels of energy every single day, then our subconscious, not knowing any better, all it does is run programs. There's not a being in there that's questioning. It's just going, well, whatever you say is what I'm going to do. Okay. All right, so if you're telling me that this is how I am for me, an affirmation, then it's going to go, okay, well, if that's what, then I'm going to make us do things that will bring about that reality that you're setting up for me. It's really that easy. So we use this I statements to let our subconscious mind know who this is about, rather than somebody else, okay? So the second thing we do, we write this in the present tense. We write these statements in the present tense. Now you'll notice I did this here. I enjoy, I feel, I eat well. Why do you think, and again, recalling our discussion about the subconscious mind, really this is what we don't do this nearly as much willpower as we let the subconscious mind, which is way more powerful, do the work. Why do you think that is? What's the psychology behind saying these in the present tense?
So it happens right now, as opposed to putting it like, I will enjoy incredible. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And your subconscious mind goes, did you have a thought, Keith?
Well, I was just going to say, if you put it in the present or past tense, it could almost never become reality because it could always be in the present or future. Or
The future and the past.
that's what I meant.
Yeah. If you tell your subconscious mind, yeah, I will have tremendous energy and I will exercise regularly, it'll go, okay, well, sometime I'll get around to it, I guess. You don't want me to do this now, so I'll just wait with this trouble. When we put it in the present tense. Now, the problem, what is the problem with putting it in the present tense? What is immediately, can you think, is the challenge with that as you say that?
If you don't do that stuff, it's kind of like difficult.
Right. Yeah, there's a sense, well, this isn't happening for me. I'm not doing this. Okay? I'm not feeling tremendous energy. I'm not feeling peaceful. I'm not. It's okay. We lie to ourselves all day long with the things we say anyway. We might as well lie to ourselves in a positive way. Really. I mean, when we say, I'm going to be eaten up by a bear when I take this test, well, that's a lie. But since we're telling ourselves that, our subconscious goes, "Must be a bear, I better get ready." Same kind of thing, only on the positive side. The subconscious will start leading you or start creating those behaviors in you that will support that lie as opposed to the other. And then pretty soon it will become reality for you. Okay, the third thing is we write it in the positive. These are written positively. So for example, you notice I wrote, I enjoy incredible levels of energy. I eat well and exercise regularly. I wouldn't say something like, I don't smoke, I don't drink soft drinks anymore, and I don't have Hostess anything. Bless you. Why do we not do that? Why is that not an appropriate
I
thing?
heard a study somewhere where they said the brain doesn't differentiate negative, it just hears positive. So you say, I don't eat Hostess, but it doesn't hear the not, and it just goes, I do eat Hostess.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So we don't, as we say, if we say, I don't drink soft drinks, if that were something for you, I recommend. But anyway, if you were to say that, your subconscious mind is going, okay, soft drinks. Okay, I guess I'm going to go have some. So you watch people who are on diets. What do people do who are on diets when they're thinking about food all the time? That's all. Yeah, and they go to the food. Okay.
It's kind of like if you're having troubles with like bills and you're getting a ton of bills and you're in debt and stuff, instead of saying, I don't want to be in debt, I'm not going to be in debt, that's still affirming the debt. You want to focus on like prosperity and financial stability and stuff.
It's the exact thing that you're talking about, yeah. What you focus on is what you're creating into your experience. And by focusing on, the smoker who's trying to quit, and all he can do is, man, I can't have a cigarette. Well, he's thinking about cigarettes, and he's going to find himself smoking really soon, because that's what he's thinking about. Logically, if we just put the opposite and let our minds focus on that, then we will find ourselves attracting to those things. Because our subconscious mind, really powerful, knows how to make that happen. Much more, far more than our conscious mind. William James, father of psychology, once said, we become what we think about all the time. And I'd add to that, we attract to ourselves the things we think about all the time. And it's not because we're consciously doing it, but we're sending these things this way down into the subconscious. So how this will look is you take each one of those values that you put on that left side, and for each one of those you do this. You write down, okay, here's my number one, and here's how I would love for it to look. You've decided it's the most important thing, right? I mean, you went through that process and you said, really, this is the most important thing. It's kind of a good idea to know what that would look like. So that you start pointing yourself at that most important thing above everything else. Does that make sense? Bob?
Can you give an example rather than help?
So my number one value is inner peace. Okay, it's mine. I don't care if it's anyone else's. It doesn't matter to me. But and I could go back and look at what I did, because I have this written out and I look at it from time to time, and it says something to this effect. I'm going to try and, it's kind of a personal thing, but mine essentially says, regardless of circumstances, I remain confident, quiet, and peaceful. When things outside of me happen that I can't control, I maintain an equanimity within me, that kind of thing. So I have a clear idea of who's in charge with my peacefulness, and how I'd like that to look. Okay, it's like 3 sentences, but I know, okay, that's what that will feel like. And I don't experience it all the time, but at least I know that if that's number 1, I have, one of mine is risk-taking. It says, I enjoy doing things that are seemingly uncomfortable. Physically, socially, spiritually. I enjoy doing things that are outside of my comfort zone. And 2 or 3 more things associated along those lines. Does that make sense? Okay. Questions? So here's your assignment. What I'm going to have you do, this shows up on the blackboard on the class website, where you're going to do this process and you'll answer the questions associated with the values chapter. But and the instructions that I've given you here are exactly the same as the instructions that are on the website. But here's the thing. Here's what I'd like you to think about. There was a group of really wise old gentlemen, long time ago, relatively speaking, that did this very thing that supports everything we do in this country. What am I talking about? Yeah, the Founding Fathers. They did this very thing, and they weren't, it was not an easy process for them. They didn't really, not everyone got along with how this was turning out. But ultimately, they created this Constitution that drives, that is, every law in our country is based on this, what they set up over 200 years ago. Companies nowadays spend tons of money making constitutions, employee or worksite constitutions, or vision statements, or mission statements is another one you hear about. This is exactly what they're doing. Exactly. I know, because I didn't make this up. I borrowed this from a company who, that's what they do. When I first did this, after I had that, I've got to do something about where I'm going, I went to my brother's cabin. He lived near Sundance, and for a week, I spent an entire week, didn't have a TV, didn't have a phone, didn't have anything with me. I just had my wisdom literature, my books that I really inspire me. And I spent a week doing this. Now, I'm not saying this is what I'd like you to do, but I felt like it was that important to me to understand who I am and what I'm about and where I want to be going. And I still have, probably 25 years later, I have this constitution of mine that I refer to very frequently. And I look at it and I go, okay, how am I doing with respect to what I feel is most important? And it grounds me, it centers me, it keeps me going in the direction. It keeps my feet on the ground when everything else feels like it's, chaotic. It also sends me skyward thinking, okay, wow, here's the things that we really, really want to be about. And if you want to take this, and this is, for some of you, this will just be another assignment. Okay, let me get this over with. Fine, give me my points. But if you take this with any degree of seriousness, it can be one of the most powerful things you can do for you, because you'll get the sense, I really have really do have a purpose. I really do have meaning in my life. Viktor Frankl, who went to, we've talked about him before, he wrote in Man's Search for Meaning, he said, the people who survived versus the people who died in these concentration camps, the thing that differentiated them more than anything else was the people who lived felt like they had meaning, that there was a purpose for staying alive. And the people who died, and they were all under the same conditions, the people who died, they were the ones who said, I must not have anything to live for, there must not be any hope, there must not be any meaning. That's why he called the book Man's Search for Meaning, because that was the determining factor that moved people in the direction of life. This is a huge deal if you want it to be. Some of you won't. It's okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to create your own constitution, your own mission statement, or whatever we want to call it, as part of this. And I'm going to give you a couple weeks to do this, so that you take some time to really think about it. And what I would suggest you do is find a place where you're by yourself. You've got no distractions. You've got things that remind you of your most important things. And I always like my wisdom literature because I read that through that stuff and I go, oh yeah, that's my highest stuff. And I got books that I really like that I got underlined passages that I always know when I go back to those, it will remind me of the highest things to think about. And so in those 2 weeks, I'd like you to take some time, go somewhere by yourself, and if you've got meetings, miss a meeting or two some Sunday or something, and go to the mountains and just think deeply for a few minutes. I'm not asking you to take long, because thinking deeply hurts. It's hard on our brain. And see what comes up for you. See what comes up for you, and don't think, well, they wanted me to think this, and those guys think I should think this about me. Go inside and say, what really comes up? See what really comes up, and watch what happens. It's really a cool thing. But you have to be quiet in order to do that. So 2 weeks from today, this will be due. And it'll be online, same as the others that we've done. And there will be also some questions related to the chapter in there. Okay, are there any questions about this?
So you agree to the value?
Yeah, you'll have a constitution. In other words, you'll have value number 1, here's what that would look like. Value number 2, here's what that would look like. So through each of the ones that you've chosen.
Do we need to do all 3 for each one? Like the I statement, the present, or can we just apply them all into one?
Yeah, so I did all 3 into that sentence right there, all 3 into that sentence. So it will just all feel like this. You won't say, well, you exercise a lot if you're healthy. That's not what your subconscious wants to hear. Okay? Good? Questions?